Hello, welcome to this video. My name is Iva, and in this video I talk about kind of my past living situation journey and it's going to be kind of a story time. Why do I talk about it? Because first of all, I just want to share on YouTube kind of my story, and second of all, I really hope that this video can help people who are living right now in an apartment that is less than optimal and they just want to change or get out and they don't know even where to start. And I just really hope that my video can help them to feel less alone. So that's why I'm making this video. So also maybe disclaimer, I'm not gonna share where I lived, like the countries or cities or something like that, because I think YouTube, there are so many really weird people on the internet, so I think it's better not to share that. Anyways, so I can just start. So for me, the first apartment that I lived in was still together with my parents, and I think that was kind of its own journey. And if I would rate the apartment, I would say for me it was like a 9 or like a 10. I really loved how it's kind of decorated. My mom, for me, made it quite cozy, really, it felt like a home. But at the same time, I feel like the older that I got and kind of the more self-independent that I got as a person, and kind of also developing my own way of thinking and my own opinion and all of that, the harder it became to live together with kind of my family. So I think that went from, it just over the years kind of it went downhill, and at one point for me it was clear I need to move out. I cannot live there because we have so different opinions, and so that was that. And I think since I moved out, I feel like at least the relationship with my mom got better. So that was that. Living with my parents, the apartment, I loved it. For me, the apartment felt like I just really liked it. It felt like home. But yeah, the atmosphere, the older I got, was not so good anymore. So then the next kind of step for me was to live with roommates during my Erasmus year in Spain, and that was that was really cool. But also, so for example, it was just, I was living together with Italians. It was in Spain, I was living together with 3 Italians, and actually they were super nice, really sweet, kind people, and I actually really liked them. But we were so different. They were, typical South Italy people, super cute, super fun. And and I was from Germany, so complete culture shock already. And also I'm vegan, I don't eat meat, and I don't party really. For me, the only thing that I do party related is to go dancing. But that's not really party, that's more social dance. And I like yoga and all of that. So it was just so weird to be in an apartment with people that are super nice but are so different to me. And so that was just an experience per se. And also just living with people from South Italy as a German, it was a complete culture shock for me, because my roommates, they were super connected with for example, I think Germans, we are a lot more individualistic. If I want to do an activity, I can also do it alone by myself and no problem. And I feel in South Italy at least, everything is a lot more connected with family, friends, all of that. So you don't do an activity by yourself, you do it more connected with a lot of friends. And because the apartment that I was living in, I don't know how, but apparently the neighbors were deaf. So really, they my roommates, they played parties in an apartment, and it was super loud, really they play music to the top. in the middle of the city, like in the middle of an apartment complex, and we never got a complaint. Like, I don't know how. So anyways, because I think our neighbors were like deaf, like our apartment became like the party apartment, and it was just so crazy because like I'm not party, like all I want to do is like just kind of work on my things, go social dance and like yoga or those types of things. So it was just a complete like culture shock for me, but still really kind people. And I feel it was also for me that time of like becoming my own person, going away from my family and kind of like slowly more and more realizing who I am, but also feeling really lost. And I feel that my one roommate was like super kind and was like a big sister to me in a way. So yeah, and the apartment, so I would say mood was like, I don't know, 7 or 8, because my roommates are like super nice, but at the same time we were so different. And I really wonder sometimes what they think about me, if they thought like, yeah, I'm just sometimes wondering about that, because I'm also like not like quote unquote normal, I don't drink and all of that. So that was crazy, but super nice people. And the apartment per se was like really old. My room was like really small. It was like no luxury at all, like really. So I would rate it maybe a 4. But at the same time, it was not like there was no mold or things like that. So it was just like really old apartment, like nothing fancy, but I had like my own little room. But yeah, maybe like a 4 or something like that. And then next step, I lived together with my ex-boyfriend. And I would say mood-wise or like atmosphere-wise, it started out really strong because I was super in love, and I think he as well. And it was just like in the first few months, it was like living together with your best friend basically. And for me, it was kind of my first experience of living together with a boyfriend. So it felt like such a cool time in the beginning. And then also step by step, it kind of deteriorated because we noticed that we have like different priorities, and like nothing mean or anything like that, but just like we were not compatible as a couple. And for me, because it was my first love, my first boyfriend, I was like so, I think, emotionally dependent on this idea of this relationship to work out, because I was like, oh, it's my first relationship, it has to work out. And then when it started to like step by step, we started to notice that we were like not compatible. I started to become like really, really sad. So I feel like it started at a 10 and then it just dropped more and more and more. And in the end, it was just like we broke up also, and then we moved out. And the apartment, I mean, it was nice, but the only thing that I didn't like was it was in like there was no window. Like we have a window, but if you look out the window, all you could see was just a wall. So it was just like, if you look up, you could have seen like a little bit of a sky, but apart from that, it was just like you're in kind of a little bit in a prison in a way. But yeah, and I think for me that's important, because like what I really care about is nature. Like for me, that's now I realize such an important part of who I am. Like I love nature, like seeing trees is like so important to me. It's such a big part of me. So I think, yeah, I don't know, the apartment also was a 4 maybe, like I don't know. And then next step, me completely heartbroken. And then afterwards I went like traveling in Asia for a couple of months by myself, and I stayed only in hostels. Like for the most parts I stayed in like dorm rooms, because, and I think like now I would be like, how did I do it? Because I was like 4.5 months staying in hostels, and I'm like now thinking, oh my god, like my present self now, I need my sleep, I need my rest, I need it to be quiet. So I think my standards have definitely risen. But I think at that point it was really good, because for me, after that breakup from my first boyfriend, I felt so lonely, because I got so used to falling asleep with someone next to me, and then when we broke up and then suddenly you have to sleep all by yourself again, like I felt so lonely. So for me, it was actually kind of a cool way to sleep in dorms and to have that feeling there are some other people also in the room. But yeah, overall, like, of course, like, if you have ever been to hostels, you know that some people snore. Then also in Asia specifically, you always had like this constant fighting about like the AC. Like, for example, there were some people who wanted it to be like super cold in the like in the dorm room, and other people wanted it to be like not cold at all. So it was like this constant fighting. So I like, on the one side, I really liked it because also like this kind of hostels, I was in a completely different continent all by myself, and I feel like those hostels, they gave me a certain security, that I always met people that were also from Germany. But at the same time, I'm like, now there's no chance I would do that again. Like, I think maybe hostel for like a weekend or maximum a week is okay, but more than that, I don't know if I would do it again. So how would I rate it? Mood, everything from 1 to 10, depending on who was part of the dorm room. And bad situation, and like, it really depended on the hostels. I was in great hostels and also not so good hostels, so maybe like also 1 to 10. And then coming back from Asia, and my next stop was again like trying to get an apartment, and I completely underestimated how difficult it would get to get an apartment, or like a roommate situation, etc. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go there, like to that city, and I will just try. And then I just went there, and I got an apartment like super randomly, for like 2 months. But it was just for 2 months because like the one person moved out, so I could have the apartment for like, of course I had to pay, but I could have the apartment for 2 months basically. And then I was there, okay, I have this apartment for 2 months, but what do I do after this like 2 months? And I completely underestimated how difficult it would get to get like an apartment or like a room even. So I was like super stressed, always like super desperate at this point. Like in the end of the 2 months, I was super desperate to get an apartment. And I think, of course, the universe, if you're that desperate, the universe sometimes answers in desperate ways also. So then I went into really the worst apartment ever. It was with like, I cannot say anything bad about, like, it was only, sorry, sometimes I start a sentence and then I have another idea, and then anyways, so yeah, and it was like, I cannot tell anything bad about the person that I lived with. It was like, and it still is a friend of mine, and she's super nice. I really like her so much, but it was just not working out because like for me, I think I'm also a little bit antisocial. Like, I'm super social when I'm with friends and all about, like, really, you can put me in a party and I can be like, I love attention and all of that. But once I get home, I'm like super antisocial. Like with my boyfriend, for example, not, because I know my boyfriend really well. He knows everything about me, so I can be myself and all of that. But like when I come kind of like to an apartment, for me it costs a lot to kind of communicate with people, and so I think it was just not a good match, because my roommate or my friend, she's like really open, really wanted to talk, and for me, I just didn't want to. Like, I want to go home and I want to kind of being quiet, so that didn't really fit so well, even though my friend is like super nice. And also the apartment was just for me really not good at all. Why? Because first of all, I didn't know that. Like, I was at the apartment on a Sunday, and I was thinking on a Sunday, like, they were like, it was right next to a street, and I was like, okay, not so many cars, it's okay. Anyways, I completely also underestimated that. It was like full house, like all the time. It was like cars everywhere, and I'm at that point in my life, I started trauma therapy, so my whole like nervous system kind of exploded. So I was like super overwhelmed by any sort of noise. So if there was a car next to me, I got like super, because of all the trauma that I was kind of dealing with, like, or like exploring at that point. It was just like, my mind was exploding. So that was so crazy. And it was also, the apartment was right above a bar, and that would not be so bad, it's just super loud. But the bad thing was, at night the bar turned into a place where people like sold drugs. So then I was sleeping literally like above, and below me there was a bar, and like at 2 a.m. in the morning, like drunk people came shouting, or like also taking lots of drugs and like screaming around, and I just felt so unsafe, and I felt so terrible in this apartment, and that made me so depressed. And like living in this apartment, it was really like there was no nature around. It was like city. I felt so terrible in this place, like, but at the same time I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, should I move back in home with my parents? Should I just leave the city? What should I do? Should I give up on my dream on making it in that place, like in that city? And I was just like so lost, and I didn't know what to do. And then I met my now boyfriend, and he helped me actually to kind of get back my hope and get back my energy. And then I was looking for new apartments, and he was super kind. And then I found a new apartment, and I moved in there, and it was much better. Like the apartment was super nice, I would say. Like it was a really nice place, the location was good. But one point, of course, sometimes if something seems too nice, it is too nice, because the owner of the apartment was living in the apartment, and that's a huge red flag. Like if you have to share the apartment with the owner of the apartment, usually that means a lot of trouble. Why? But at that point I was like, I don't care, just get me out of this terrible apartment that I'm in right now. I want to get out of here. And so I moved in there, and that's when I was like full-time trauma therapy, like doing lots of trauma therapy, like super hardcore, like low point in my life, like super like depression symptoms, all of that. Anyways, I was in that apartment, and I was like, this is not optimal as well, like because the owner of the apartment was living in the apartment, and it was like an old lady who was already retired, and so she had a lot of time, and I think that her coping mechanism to deal with life was to clean, and that made me feel like a cucaracha. So like it's Spanish word for like, I don't know the English word, but like an insect that is like disgusting. It just made me feel like I was constantly being monitored and like constantly walking on eggshells, and it was just like, I just stayed there because the apartment was nice, and I think at that point I was just so burned out from like therapy, my life, trauma, and like moving around for the past years, always in different apartments and traveling. So that I think that's why I stayed, just because I was just like burned out. But it was so not optimal, and it was always like I would clean. And then the old lady would come and be like, oh, you forgot something. And I'm like, oh my god, like I'm just here trying to survive, and like and that lady was just like constantly cleaning, and I was like a little bit like there was nothing on the floor, like it was super clean, and then the old lady started to clean again, and I'm like, oh my freaking god. And that was like, and also I don't like that person. I think like I don't like that person at all. Like right now I already feel like all of that anger coming up, but I don't think that she's a good person. I don't think so. And there were so many things living with this person, and I just I was so angry. And the thing is, I couldn't even, like, it was not even democracy. Like, it was not like, you know, when you live with roommates, and one roommate is doing something that you don't like, you can tell them, hey, I don't like that, don't do that. But it was because she was the owner of the apartment. It was literally like her apartment. I couldn't tell her, hey, stop smoking in the living room, because it's disgusting. Because then she said like, okay, get out of my apartment. So it felt like I had no rights there, and I'm just so angry that I stayed at this apartment. Anyways, then finally I moved in together with my boyfriend, and now I'm in another apartment, and it's much better. I feel like the apartment now is not so fancy, like not so fancy, but it's a really cool. it's quiet. I can see nature, and living with my boyfriend, of course, like no one is perfect, but so far it's like living with a best friend, and that's so nice. And I feel just, and I feel also, I feel like for like 1.5 years that I was like in the past 3 different apartments, I was always out of the apartment. Like I was working outside. If I had time, I went to the park. I was literally just at home in my room where nobody can disturb, like can annoy me or something, or I was in the kitchen making food. That was the only time I was in that, like in the apartment. And I think now, the first time in like a long time, I actually enjoy being at home, and I don't have the need to constantly kind of escape and like go out. And I feel like finally like peace, and I feel so burned out from all of this like moving around and all of that. But I feel that now I'm in this place and I can kind of like heal from from all of this. So that was that story. I think what I can tell you is that sometimes it doesn't matter about how an apartment looks. It matters much more with whom you are in that apartment. And also I can recommend, if you're in an apartment that you don't like, either because you live with roommates or with your boyfriend, girlfriend, and it's not working out, or because the apartment per se is horrible. Like for example, for me, right above like a drug bar, oh my god, then I would like, for me, either I got more and more depressed and I had less and less energy, or you really say like, okay, like I take all the energy that I still have and I look for a new apartment. And yes, it will be like, it will take time. Yes, it will be a lot of work, and yes, it's a lot, but if I'm in a new place that I actually like, it will be much better. So don't give up if you're currently in a place that you don't like. It's a journey, and yeah, so much luck to you. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and see you in my next video. Thank you so much.